years ago, a lot of people who played Dark Souls 3 found this place kind of a slog. Not hated the fun way FromSoft fans usually mean it. Genuinely found it tedious. Forum threads from 2016 straight up ask, am I the only one who thinks this Undead Settlement is boring? It shows up again and again in least favorite area lists. Usually lumped in with Fair and Keep, as a stretch of the game people just wanted to get through. But go back to this level now, with 10 years of critical vocabulary we didn't have in 2016, and it stops looking like padding. It starts looking like one of the most quietly brutal pieces of world building From Software has ever shipped, and almost nobody was reading it that way at launch. Quick refresher for anyone who hasn't touched this since 2016. Undead Settlement is the second real area in Dark Souls 3, right after Highwall. You arrive here after being transported as cargo, a derailed carriage full of undead, dumped at the base of a slum built from crude, rotting buildings. The residents are, themselves, mostly undead, some hollowed into monsters, some still lucid enough to farm and prey and hide. Roaming the level are evangelists, the hooded women who present themselves as missionaries, sent to bring the villagers religion and comfort. Above the whole settlement on a tower, overlooking a graveyard, sits a giant with a great bow, firing down on anything that moves through the valley below, the player included, unless you earn his trust. And deep in the sewers you find Irina, a blind nun who came to Lothric hoping to become a firekeeper, locked in a cell, guarded by a knight named Aegon, who claims he's protecting her from something. That's the level. Now here's what people actually said about it. Go digging through Steam discussion threads and forum posts from launch year, and a pattern shows up fast. The complaints are almost entirely about friction, not meaning. People flag the enemy density. They flag specific fights feeling cheap or repetitive. The general sentiment in a lot of threads was closer to boring or a chore to go through than anything about what the level was actually depicting. Even players who defended it tended to defend it on pacing grounds. There's enough to satisfy me, one Steam posted from mid-2016. Not, here's what this place is about. That's not really anyone's fault. In 2016, the mainstream language for reading environmental storytelling in games, treating a level's geography and NPC behavior as text, the way you would read staging in a film, was still mostly confined to niche corners of games criticism. The dominant question was, is this fun? Is this fair? Is this well paced? Not, what is this level doing to me and why? So when a level is built to feel oppressive on purpose, cramped, hostile, unglamorous, the 2016 response was, understandably, this feels oppressive, full stop. The on-purpose part mostly didn't make it into the conversation. Here's what actually holds up under a closer read, and is stranger and more specific than the level is about persecution in the abstract. Start with the evangelists. Their stated purpose in world is to bring religion and enlightenment to the Undead Settlement. Their real purpose, confirmed by the game's own lore, is to identify and collect victims to be sacrificed. It's heavily implied that the settlement, once the undead population grew too large to manage, began dissecting the excess and shipping the remains off to the Cathedral of the Deep, to be devoured by the thing living underneath it. That's not subtext. That's the actual function of the missionaries running this level. A bureaucratic harvesting operation dressed as pastoral care. Then there's the detail almost nobody talks about. Scattered through the settlement are hollows who are completely passive. They don't attack you. They give you no souls when they're killed. The game itself flags them as beneath the currency system. But they are frequently the target of hostility from others, hostile hollows around them. In other words, the level's cruelty isn't just top-down, church versus peasant, it's lateral. The underclass preys on itself. And the giant, he's not a mindless obstacle, he's a neutral party you can make peace with, who will fight for you. But even once he's your ally, he keeps firing on the graveyard below, indiscriminately, because that's where the hollow masses gather. He's not evil, he's just sorted the world into people worth protecting and bodies worth clearing. And once you're on the right side of the line, the other side stops being your problem. That's 3 separate systems in one level, all quietly running the same idea. Who gets to count as a person here, and who's just infrastructure?
Are you? I help anytime. I help anytime. I help anytime.
So what's actually changed? Not the level, not one line of dialogue, not any item description. Undead Settlement in 2026 is identical to the one that shipped in 2016. We changed between 2016 and now. Long-form games criticism matured into a genuinely mainstream genre. Channels built entirely around close reading level design, item description, and environmental storytelling. The way criticism breeds blocking and lighting, that kind of analysis existed in 2016, but it wasn't the dominant lens yet. It is now. Lore breakdown videos on channels dedicated to exactly this have spent years since establishing that the evangelist and cathedral pipeline, the passive hollow detail, the giant sorting logic, all of it was there waiting. There's also just more of us looking. A game's most interesting design choices don't always get noticed on a single playthrough by a single outlet on release week. They get noticed cumulatively over a decade by a community that keeps going back and comparing notes. Undead Settlement had 10 years of that. In 2016, it had 10 days. So, was the Undead Settlement always this carefully constructed, and we just weren't reading closely enough in 2016? Or are we now finding meaning in a level that really was just an uneven, occasionally tedious stretch of the game, and calling that growth after the fact? Honestly, probably both. A little. Good critical reading isn't about insisting a level was secretly a masterpiece the whole time. It's about noticing what a piece of the design actually does. The harvesting operation dressed as ministry, the hollow-on-hollow cruelty, the giant's arbitrary line between person and pest, and asking why it was built that way, instead of only asking how it is felt to play through in the moment. None of that was hidden. It was all sitting there in 2016, and the same assets we're looking at today. We just hadn't built the sentence structure yet to describe it. If revisiting this level after 10 years leaves you with one thing, maybe it's this. The next time a piece of design annoys you, it's worth pausing on why it annoys you. Because sometimes what you're calling tedious is actually a system working exactly as designed, and you just don't have the vocabulary for it yet.
Oh, pardon me, I was absorbed in thought. I am Siegwart of Katarina. To be honest, I'm in a bit of a pickle. Have you ever walked near a white birch only to be struck by a great arrow? Well, If I'm not mistaken, they come from this tower. Whoever it is, I'm sure I can talk some sense into them. But I have to find a way up. And that's just the trouble. This lift only goes down. Well, that doesn't get me any.
I help anytime.